Welcome to the Life Illuminated podcast. I'm Maggie Kelly, your host, and I'm excited to welcome Lexi Godlewski to the show. Lexi is what she calls herself a soulpreneur. So, welcome to the show, Lexi.
Thank you so much, Maggie. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So, talk to us about what a soulpreneur is.
Yeah, so a soultrepreneur is an entrepreneur who leads with their soul first. So they lead with those bigger dreams and callings that they have. And they are an entrepreneur who leads with those callings to build a business that positively impacts the world so that they can experience the richness of life. So everything I do with my clients, as well as my own life, my own business, it really leads with that soul piece first, which is what differentiates a soultrepreneur from the typical entrepreneur.
So, give me some examples of the kind of people that you work with and how do you get them? Do you need to maneuver with them, have different conversations with them, steer them in a direction in this manner, sort of do some coaching before you get that piece?
Yes. So I work with entrepreneurs and a lot of service based businesses across a variety of industries, backgrounds, missions, what they're trying to do. But really, what they all have in common is this purpose driven goal and dream that they have, where they not only want to build a business and make an impact on the world, but they have this dream that they want to bring to life. And they have this deeper mission and vision that they want to really see and utilize in the world and use to make an impact on people. So I work with a lot of coaches, a lot of healers. I work with a lot of people in just the holistic world or who really appreciate taking a holistic approach to life and to business as well. And I take them through what I call my soulpreneur process, which means we start with that soul piece first before we look at the strategy and the business action items to take and that type of thing. Because what I found is that, I could sit down and help with a client's marketing strategy all day and give them the top things to go fix and implement. But if they have a mindset block or an energy block that's stopping them or saying to them, who am I to go and do this thing? Who am I to bring this big mission into the world? Who am I to go and be fabulous and all these things? Then they're not going to even act on those strategies. So what we do in this entrepreneur world is we focus on the soul piece first, which means we're looking at and really defining what is your vision that you want to bring into the world? What is your deeper mission that you have? What's your why? What are those roadblocks that are getting in your way and stopping you from doing those things? And let's work through all that first so that we can really root ourselves in that as the foundation. And then from there, strategically build a life and a business that helps you bring that to life.
So, as a healer, meditation teacher, and energy healer myself, I kind of believe that I already started my business with that sort of mission. Like I already knew I'll read you my mission statement just so you can,
Yes, please.
right? The mission of our brand is to help people all over the world cultivate emotional well-being, increase their capacity to love and care for others, and participate in the creation of a more interconnected and compassionate world.
Beautiful.
So, is that something you help that person cultivate before you go that next place with them?
Definitely. That's one of the components for sure is looking at what is that deeper mission that you have because so many entrepreneurs get into business just to make money and then build the business and then sell it and then go on to the next thing. And in soulpreneurship, we're looking at what is that deeper mission that you have that is not only about the money, but is about so much more. It's about the impact. It's about utilizing your gifts. It's about the positive transformation, whatever that thing is. And so rooting clients in first and foremost, the mission is huge because then when we build off of that, we can make decisions from that place and say, okay, is doing X, Y, and Z aligned with the vision that I have and the mission that I'm here to do? Yes or no? And then really start to not only make decisions from that place, but build a business and build a life that they really love from that and be aligned with that mission in all that they do.
So, okay, so I kind of think that most of the healers and meditation people and people like in my space might already be coming at it from a place of less monetary gain and more purpose driven to begin with, right? So, are you also finding like a different kind of business showing up to try and find a more soul driven way to live their business life?
Well, it's funny because I feel like I live in these 2 different worlds where, to your point, I work with a lot of clients who have this bigger purpose that they're called to pursue. They have this bigger vision that they wanna bring to life, and they are really challenged with, "Okay, I have this big dream, it's very different from what I'm doing on my day-to-day right now. How do I make this leap? How do I transform and start doing that thing? You know, how do I start building my business full time and living in this mission full time?" And so I have that group of clients and entrepreneurs who really have that dream and have that mission, to your point. And now it's like, okay, how do I bring this to life? How do I actually do it? And then I'm also seeing this transformation right now as well with after the pandemic and everything, like, a lot of businesses are also looking for how do I and how do we engage our employees, and how do we bring more soul into the business of what we're doing and into our marketing and everything like that, because what used to work in the past doesn't work anymore in the marketing world, and just trying to incentivize employees through, free pizza on Fridays or whatever it is. And so it's kind of this interesting world where I have this very passionate, driven group of individuals trying to bring that to life. And also there's a lot of businesses and a lot of companies that are now asking, how do we bring more purpose into what we're doing and into to re-engage our employees, and how do we bring more soul into our marketing and that type of thing too. So it's kind of living these 2 worlds, but either way, it really does start from that place of what's the purpose, what's the mission, what's the vision, what are the values, and how do we expand and build off of that.
Yeah, because you would think that any corporate American business has a mission statement like mine. Well, not like mine, but you know what I mean. It has a mission state that drives the bus. Right? But where
Yeah.
you're talking about is taking it down to a different level that brings some soul to it, obviously, and brings not just the purpose and the mission, but what are we really here to accomplish beyond the capitalistic piece, right? Because
Exactly.
anyone in the space that I'm in realizes you're not going to be a millionaire doing what I'm doing. And that's something you just set aside because that's not really the goal anyway.
It's been cool to kind of live in both of these worlds to see that the underlying theme is this idea of soulful transformation. How do we bring more soul into our lives and into our businesses? And how do we really transform and make that a reality versus just a dream in our heads?
So, why aren't there more people out there like you?
Well, I there are a lot of people, but a lot of people from what I've experienced have been from my work with clients, and what I experience is that we are so quick to get in our own ways. And that's what I found is people do have these bigger dreams, right? They do want to live their lives to the fullest. They don't want to just go and spend their most of their waking hours at work doing a job that doesn't have meaning behind it. Like, people do want that, but we can be so quick to get in our own ways, and we can be so quick to hold ourselves back from what we're really capable of, or hold ourselves back from using the gifts that we were born with, or really stepping into that bigger vision and mission that we have for ourselves. And so what I found is that there's tons of people out there with these dreams and with these soul callings, but we're so quick to get in our own way and stop ourselves from even giving it a chance to become reality.
Don't you also think, though, too, that some of us with a big vision to do just that, to have a soul powered business, get a little frightened by actually putting their fully in the water because, well, I'm not going to make the money. And can I let go of the materialistic, capitalistic world I've been in and jump ship and do what my soul really wants to be doing? Are you finding a lot of that?
Oh, totally. I mean, So for me personally, and I'll share my story to give a little bit more context of this, is that's exactly what I did every time I've listened to my soul and transformed my life. Is I made these big leaps of faith where growing up, I followed the path that I thought I was quote unquote supposed to take. And after college, I got the full-time marketing job, was doing really well in it. I was getting, as a 23-year-old, promotions and pay raises, and I was hiring team members. And on the outside, I was excelling. I had it all. I was achieving success. This was what I worked so hard for throughout school. And on the outside, it seemed like I had everything together. But on the inside, I was miserable. I hated my life. I hated what I was doing. I hated getting out of bed and going to work every day. And I was really in this place of questioning, like, are we for real? Like, this is it? This is just adulthood now, as I just wake up and I go to a job I don't enjoy and I climb the ladder and I get the paycheck and then I come home and I rinse and repeat. And this is life now. And I had a really hard time accepting that because I had much bigger dreams for myself. I had a lot more that I wanted to do. And so I worked that job for a year and ended up leaving that to go full time into entrepreneurship, which is something that I always had this calling towards. It's something that I always dreamed of doing. And I had gotten to a point where I was depressed. I was facing daily anxiety attacks. I just was not in a good place working this job, so I just figured, you know what, I'm young. Right now, I don't have family, a house, kids that I have to take care of, so let me go take this leap of faith and follow my dreams while I'm young and see what happens, and that's what I did. I up and quit that job and started my own business from scratch. I picked up side hustles like babysitting in a coffee shop to pay the bills, and I went all in on really coming from this place of wanting to transform my life and wanting to transform that by leading and listening to my soul first, which is calling me to start my own business and coach people and get into marketing and all of these different things. And so I really dove headfirst into that. And then years later, I also made a big leap of faith when I decided to up and move from New York all the way to Hawaii, which at the time was a place I had never been before. I didn't know anyone out here. I literally just had a soul calling that said, I want to live somewhere warm and by the ocean, and let's go try this. So I sold my car, bought a one-way ticket, packed 2 suitcases in a duffel bag, sent it, came out to Hawaii, told my family, let me go try this out for a year. A year went by and I was like, sorry, not leaving anytime soon. And now we've been out here for 3.5 years. So my story, I did make those big leaps of faith. And there were definitely times when it was a risk and it didn't work out. And there's definitely times when it has worked out where I am now, more fulfilled and I make a bigger impact and I use my gifts and I really lead with that vision and that mission like we talked about. And it has paid off in a variety of ways. So my story is a bit of an extreme example of making these big leaps of faith in transforming my life and seeing what happens when I do. But that doesn't mean that everyone has to do that. That doesn't mean that you have to make this drastic change to start living with more soul and start experiencing that. What I tell people all the time is first, if you can just start to tune in and listen to what your soul's trying to tell you, that can be something such as, I've always wanted to learn how to play guitar, or I've wanted to learn how to cook, or I wanted to do X, Y, and Z. And if you can start listening to that and at least start to play with that a little bit more, if your dream has been to always learn how to play guitar, can you look up local guitar lessons near you to get your feet wet into that, to start playing with it, to see if you do enjoy it and see where that path leads you down? Like, you don't need to make these giant leaps of faith if you can just start by listening. And you can, like I have, but you don't have to. And you can start listening to that and just leaning into it a little bit more and almost using that muscle, because the more that you use it, the more you're going to strengthen it and the easier it'll start to become to hear your soul and to listen to that, to tune into it, to trust it. So even just starting small in little ways like that can make a big change in people's lives, to just start leaning into it on a daily basis.
Yeah, and your story is very similar to mine. I just took a little longer to get there, but I think the point that you're bringing up is a couple things. One is listening to your voice, listening to your intuition and following your intuition. But the other piece is sometimes fear can be a great motivator for some of us. It didn't sound like you had a lot of fear. You just kind of went for it. But for the most part, most of us aren't coming to that realization that, you wake up and like, is this all there is? Am I going to be doing this the rest of my life? We sometimes don't get there for a little bit longer than you took to get there, but it's fear. And also, like you pointed out, at that point, you didn't have a lot of obligations and responsibilities. They would have made you question the choice. Most of us do. We have fear and we have responsibilities that kind of keep us from pursuing what we really want to be doing. And I love that, you're talking about taking little baby steps. If it's guitar, great. If it's cooking, wonderful. If it's quilting, go for it. But to
Yeah.
be able to start creating the muscle around saying yes to yourself and to your dreams, because the last thing any of us wanna do
Right.
is wake up on our deathbed and look back at our life and say, "Geez, I wish I did it differently." Right?
Right. And
So
and that has been honestly my greatest driver is that fear of regret. I fear regret more than anything else in my life. I have, like I said, quit my job, moved across country. I've done adventurous things like swam with sharks and climbed mountains and done all those things. And it's always been I have been more nervous about regretting not doing that thing than actually going and doing that thing. And that doesn't mean that I haven't had fear at all throughout this whole journey. I definitely have had my fears of, what if I do this and it doesn't go the way I expect it to, or if I fail, or X, Y, and Z. Like that whole first year of business was really me waking up every day questioning, like, oh my gosh, like I have this vision and I have this bigger dream, but am I crazy? Like, who am I to go and do this? What's going to happen when I do? And so it really wasn't about not being afraid at all. It's about feeling the fear and going and doing it anyway.
exactly, exactly. So I would encourage any listener to ask yourself, what is it that you're most afraid of? And what tiny little step can you take to just put your toe in and see
Right.
how it goes? I also believe that if you are on the right track, the universe is going to let you know by throwing a bunch of synchronicities in the path. And every single synchronicity is just telling you you're on the right track. You're on the right track. You're on the right track. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going.
Yeah, I fully believe that too. And I, from the start of this, have gotten those little nudges from the universe as well, or little signs and synchronicities that have always been the reassurance for me of, okay, I'm on the right path, as well as just that feeling of more happiness and more fulfillment. When I was in my full-time job and I was feeling depressed and daily anxiety attacks, those to me were kind of the check engine light of my life. So, when you're driving your car and the check engine light comes on, your car's trying to warn you, like, hey, it needs more oil or more air in the tires or whatever it is. And for me, the depression and anxiety were manifestations of my check engine light, of my soul saying, hey, something's off here. Like, let's get realigned, let's get back on path. And when I started to actually listen and say yes to more of those soul callings, the more I felt that realignment come into place and the depression lifted and the anxiety attacks stopped. And I started to feel more appreciation for life and happiness again and fulfillment from doing those things. So, those were big kinda eye-opening moments for me, but once I started to get realigned, that's when more of those signs from the universe started to come in, where I feel like I get them on a daily occurrence now, and that's when I started to feel more of that happiness and fulfillment for sure.
Yeah, and I think you're talking to a meditation teacher too. So for me, it's all about quieting that dialogue, that internal dialogue that says, I can't, I shouldn't, what about X, Y, and Z, all those things that get driven up whenever we're about to make a shift. Of course, it's not always clean, it's not always pretty, and it's certainly not without challenge, but that doesn't mean it's not worth it.
Totally, and not only quieting that voice, but really something that I've been working on recently is aligning with the truth. So aligning with the truth of who you are, aligning with the truth of what's here now, and That has been a really powerful exercise for me because it's allowed me to call out those stories that I've been telling myself, or that self-talk that's in my head. I've been able to more easily call out the lies because I'm more connected with the truth of who I actually am. So now I'll hear one of those stories come up, right, that says, "Lexi, who are you to do this?" Or "Lexi, you're stupid," or whatever it is, whatever that story is, and I've been able to be like, call it out and be like, "That's not true." Like, I know the truth of who I am, and that's just a story that I'm ready to let go of, and here we are, we're gonna do this thing. So aligning with the truth of who I am and letting that be louder than the other stories has been really powerful for me in this too, and really helping me stay aligned with who I am and where I'm trying to go.
It's great, a great point, and it's not always easy when some of us have been holding on to some of these stories for decades, right? So really, I think in addition to that, it's like, how long do you want to continue to tell yourself and everyone else who will listen that same story about why not? Why can I not be successful? Why I won't take that risk? Why it won't work for me, or whatever that is that's the main question, is what is the story you tell yourself, and how long do you want to keep telling it? Because when we tell stories like that, right? When we tell stories like that, it's really just an excuse not to be responsible for our own happiness. Because if I can tell you all the reasons why it's not going to work, I get to stay the victim and I'm not responsible.
Right.
So much easier to be the victim than it is to be responsible for our own happiness.
And that was one of the biggest things that really helped me transform my life multiple times, to be honest with you, is starting to become aware of what is that story that I'm telling myself on a daily basis. And is that the story that I want to keep telling? Like really, when I understood that I am the author of this story and I get to turn the page and I get to write a chapter and I get to write that chapter how I want it to go. Now, that doesn't mean that we control how things happen or how things unfold. No, because we don't have control over that, but we can control our response to it and what that means for us and what we choose to do with that and who we choose to become because of that. And when I really started to grasp that and tell the story of the life that I actually wanted to live and the business I actually wanted to have, that's when things got really good. Like, for example, I never dreamed of living in Hawaii. Like, this wasn't even in my mind a possibility. I didn't even realize that this was an option of something that could happen. But back during the pandemic, I was living in New York and just working on my computer, trying to build this business every day. And again, had another one of these epiphanies. At the time, I was in my mid 20s. And so I had this epiphany of there's got to be more to life than just sitting in front of my computer every day. And so I started to tell the story of, you know what, I want to write my story as someone who lives in warm weather and by the beach and lives this adventurous lifestyle. And I ride my bike and I'm outdoors and I'm active all the time. And I have these friends and blah, blah, blah. I just started to tell this story of the life that I actually wanted. And I continued to put energy towards that. I continued to focus on that. And it built momentum to the point where at the end of 2020, I had gotten a text from 3 separate friends from 3 separate friend groups who sent me a link to this article that said that Hawaii at the time was incentivizing remote workers and entrepreneurs to come out here. And I said, "Okay, that's enough of a sign for me to say, let's give this a try." And then wouldn't you know, a few months later, here I was out in Hawaii, and it was everything that I talked about and more. And it was something that flowed so easily, and I'm still living today. So that understanding how much power you have in writing your story and the narrative that you tell yourself, the when you really just take ownership of that and realize how much power you have to write your story the way you want it to go and craft that narrative, that was so game changing for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you talk about, part of that is really being able to listen, really being able to listen to your soul and to follow the path, even if, no matter what.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna go for it. I'm gonna do it. Because really, when all is said and done, the worst that happens is it doesn't work. But you did say something else that I think is important, is that when we make a choice to go with our heart's desire, it flows. Everything flows around it. It's
Yeah.
like the friend groups that sent you the same thing. It's the universe's indicator that you're on the right path and carry on. Yeah. And I'm not,
Exactly.
yeah. I imagine that the
Yeah,
people,
it was amazing.
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it was amazing, and the we we have a saying out here in Hawaii too that the island either welcomes you in or pushes you back out, and it makes it very clear on which one that is. And so the fact that things did flow so easily when I moved out here was to me such an amazing nod from the universe of, you're back in alignment and keep flowing with it. And when you are in that flow, I have found that even more is possible than you could even imagine, and the universe is trying to give you more. It's trying to show you what's really possible. It's trying to show you what else is out there, and so the more that I stayed open to that flow and stayed in alignment with it, the more the universe showed me what was actually possible, which was just so many more adventures and friends and experiences that I didn't even know were a possibility. It started to show me, so that was just miraculous and really amazing and a result of being in that flow and saying yes to that.
And part of that, a really big part of that is just trust. Trusting that the
Yeah.
universe knows what they're doing, what spirit knows what they're doing. And honestly, anything and everything we want already exists in the quantum field. Everything, whether it's the relationship, the house, the money, whatever, it's already there. We just have to be the ones that bring it to us. And that's what you're talking about, really, is just in you mentioned that, whichever story I'm gonna tell is obviously bringing power to the story. So if I bring a story up that has something to do with my past and my traumas and dramas, that's where I'm gonna live. But I have a story of living on the beach somewhere warm and having this beautiful business and not worrying too much about much. That's the story that ends up expanding.
100%. And that has been something that's been actually so powerful and impactful in my life that I will often take clients through that same experience at the end of our calls and to see the things that have happened in my clients' lives that were once just dreams that they talked about, but the more we started to put time and energy and focus onto those things and start telling the story of here's what I want and here's why I want it and here's how it feels to have that as if I already had it. And the more that we started to play with that and practice it, just these things have flowed into their lives so beautifully and so much more easily than things in the past. So that is one thing that I can't stress enough because it's been so impactful in my life is really just taking ownership of your story, realizing that you can write that story and change that story anytime you want and watch what happens when you do.
Yeah, and therein I go back to the faith. Faith in that and the trust that the universe is listening to whatever story that is. Whichever story you're deciding to tell, the universe is gonna be listening, so be careful because your word means everything. Absolutely everything.
And it's so powerful.
And it clouds or creates everything that comes next.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally, and so that's where this practice that I've been doing of trying to stay aligned with the truth of who I am has come in so beautifully and so powerfully because it's in those moments where when I think about the vision that I have or the things that I wanna do, I can more easily align with that and start telling that story versus the person and the versions of me that I've been in the past, and it's almost like a a software update, like, just like how your phone gets a software update, like, when you start telling this new story, when you start aligning with that higher version of you and really practicing being that version of you that you wanna become, it's like this inner software update for your mind, your body, and your soul, where all of a sudden, when you start to embody being this person who has the business or has done the thing or has written the book or has started the podcast, when you really start to embody that version of you, because like you said, it already exists. If you can think about that version of you, if you can picture them, you can start to feel what that version of you would feel like. It already exists. So now how do we just start tapping into it, and how do we just start embodying it? And anytime I do that too, it's like, again, this inner software update inside of me, because now all of a sudden, instead of just thinking, and this is a major differentiator between just an entrepreneur and a soultrepreneur too, because a lot of entrepreneurs are out there just hustling all the time and they're not listening to their soul. They're not listening to their intuition. They're just hustling and grinding and trying to get to that next level. But a soultrepreneur really pauses for a moment and says, what's this vision? What's this mission? Who is that version of me that has the thing that I already want or is doing the thing I want to be doing? And instead of just doing my way there, how do I start to embody and be that version of me? Because when I start from that place first, when I start from that soul place first, the doing will show itself. But if you start with that being place of really starting to be that version of you that you want to become, and start to think how that person would think, how to dress as that person would dress, act like they would act, then the doing is going to show itself of what next steps to naturally take. And it's going to be in alignment, like you were saying, and in a flow, because you're aligning yourself with that version of you and then acting from that place first.
Yeah. One of the things that I noticed, because there's been some incredible synchronicities for me in the last few weeks, yeah, opportunities that just dropped out of the sky. Just everything is flowing and falling in line. I got it. Thank you, universe. But
Love it. Yep.
one thing I think is super important to stress, when I started sharing all of that with one of my friends, all she could do was throw in the roadblocks that I'm going to encounter, or in her mind, she thought I would encounter. And I actually, for the first time in my life, I said, you know what? I'm going to stop you right there, because I'm living inside of possibility. I'm living inside of the flow. And I know that spirit is taking care of me. And I just need to get out of the way. And I really just can't hear what you're saying to me right now. So I think it's really important that when you are on the roll that Lexi's talking about, or I've been experiencing recently, that you're very careful to surround yourself with people who uplift that vision, who see you in that vision, who believe in you in that vision, and who aren't going to be the negative Nellies of your vision.
Yeah.
All you
That's
need,
huge.
yeah.
And that has been such a big thing that I've learned is be very intentional about who you share your dreams with, as well as who you take advice from. You know, if someone isn't living the lifestyle that I want to be living or doing the things I want to be doing, I take their advice with a grain of salt, and I acknowledge that, because there's a lot of people who are filled with their own self-doubt and are filled with their own frame of mind of how they see the world. And one of the things that was a really big challenge for me going through this journey and just starting to listen to my soul and trust that more was when I started to tell people about the things I wanted to do, like quit my job or move out to Hawaii. I received a lot of doubt, a lot of naysayers, a lot of people who were like, what are you doing? Why would you move so far away from home, away from your friends and your family, to one of the most expensive places in the US where you don't know anyone, you've never been there before? Like, valid. But for me, there was this calling in my soul that was so deep and so real that I just knew I had to go and do it. But if I let the external noise cause static in that, I would never have taken these leaps that I have and experienced what I have. So you have to be very intentional about the noise that you're letting into your head and really continuing to trust your soul calling and understand that your callings and your dreams are in you for a reason. They're not in everyone else. And so a lot of times when you start to listen and lead with that and start to create a life where you are following your dreams, there's going to be a lot of people who don't understand those dreams. They don't understand you taking those leaps of faith. And that's okay. Like, they're not meant to, because they have their own dreams. And most people aren't even listening to their own dreams that they have too. So, of course, it's going to be hard for them to support you if they're not even listening and trusting their own. So, learning that was a huge lesson for me, and it allowed me to have a lot more patience and grace with other people as well as myself, and really start listening and trusting to what I heard inside of me versus leaning and really relying on other people's input and all that external noise that was causing static in my dreams and what I wanted to do.
Exactly. I mean, I think any of us have our own doubt here and there, our own second guessing here and there. We don't need the outside influence of someone else's worries, concerns, their own fears on top of ours. I think it's important that we wrestle with our own fears and return back to our purpose and return back to our soul's mission and follow through one way or the other. Because again, what have you got to lose other than, oh, I made a mistake? I can move back. Or it didn't work out, but I'm sure glad I tried. I mean, it's really not,
Right.
it's not the end of the world. The end of the world is you never tried at all. And you're sitting there, watching news 24 hours a day at high decibels in your old age. And that's how you live out the rest of your life. I mean, if you look at any
Totally.
person, that's how they're living their life for the most part, right? Seldom do we see
Totally.
people really living full out all the way to the end of their life. I want to be that person, whether it's doing what I'm doing
Totally.
as a healer or teacher, whatever, or gardening or traveling or whatever it is. I look at my parents both and they were traveling until they were in their mid 80s. I mean,
Oh, that's incredible.
who travels to Europe at 85, right? Very
That's awesome. I love that.
My mother even had a little boyfriend. He was a couple of years younger than her. She was 87 and he was 84. I mean, come on.
That's awesome.
And I think it's important to surround yourself with people like that, whether they're your parents or
Oh,
they're,
it's
you know,
huge.
but someone who's elder to you that you look up to, I think, because they were both inspiring. Both my parents were completely ambulatory until they died in their mid 80s and my father was still fishing and traveling and, hunting and doing his thing in his mid 80s before he died. I want to be like that. I want to live my life to the fullest to the end until someone pulls the plug.
100%.
Right.
I'm right there with you. And it can make or break a dream who you surround yourself with, and the environment that you plant yourself in can really make or break what you do. Because if you are filled with the naysayers who also aren't listening to or following their soul callings, they're just, living this mundane routine or whatever it is, they're going to be so quick to tell you why you shouldn't do that thing. But if you're surrounded by people who are also in the weeds with you, who are also listening to their soul, they're doing the hard work, they're going for it, they're taking risks, they're having fun and seeing what happens, it's going to inspire you to want to do the same, exactly to your point. And back earlier this year, I gave a TEDx talk about how to live life fully by leading with your soul first. And one of the things that I discovered in doing my research and prepping for that talk was that there was caretaker Bronnie Ware who wrote a book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. And she interviewed elderly people who are on their deathbeds and asked them about their lives. And the top number one regret of the dying was, I wish I lived a life that was true to myself, not the life that others wanted for me. And so that really sticks in my brain and all that I do, because again, I do not want to come to the end of my life and have regrets about what I did or how I spent my time. And I would much rather take the risk and go for it and see what happens than just have that be a dream in my mind that I never went for. And I'd sit and ask what ifs versus actually going for it and seeing what happens.
And to me, that right there speaks to living a life illuminated, right? You're living a life that's totally illuminated by your purpose and your desire instead of hoping that something along the way is just going to fall in your lap and it'll all work out. And I love that. I love that. How can people find you, Lexi?
Yeah, people can find me in a variety of ways. First, on all social media platforms, my handle is at Lexi Godlewski, and that's LexiGodski. As well as if they want to check out the TEDx talk, they can go to YouTube and just search how to live life fully, and that'll come right up. And lastly, I have a free audio training on how to start listening to your soul and how you can leverage that to start creating the life and business you want. They can grab that at transformwithsoul.com.
I love it. I love it. Well, this has been great. It's
Thank
really
you.
fun to connect with a very like-minded soul like you. And
Yes.
yeah, a lot of fun.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. This was a blast.
And I hope to have you again in the future at some point.
Oh, I'd love to. Thank you so much.